Welcome! In this series of videos, we will cover the design and implementation of a project, from initial design through coding and development to testing, using the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today we will continue our project to create our own web browser by adding support for target pages. When you're designing a website, the use of the target command does give you a better opportunity to use tabs in your browser more efficiently. As you can see here on screen, we have an href command linking to page1.html. And following this href, we have the target command, which is going to go to a page 1 target. So how does this actually work on a web page? If we have a look at the GSF software website, we can see this quite easily. We're currently looking at the recently added page. The source view column makes heavy use of the target keyword. Clicking on this icon allows you to view the source code for that particular project. If we click on that, we can see that it opens in a new tab, titled Web Coder Result. This gives you all the source code for that particular project. If we go back to the original index page and click on a different view source, this will link to a different page, but it will reuse the tab that we have previously created, the Web Coder Result. This saves the user opening multiple tabs which all have the same function. So this is what we're going to implement in our Lite browser today. So before we have a look at the code, we will look at the index page, the index 2. In here we have a number of links to pages, and we've given them targets. A target for page 1, page 2, page 3 and page 4. For page 6 and page 7, I've given them the same target. So what this should do is every time we click on the link to page 6, it will open up a separate tab, display that page, and when you click on the link for page 7, it will overwrite the same tab. So let's now have a look at the code to see what changes we need to make to support the target command. As with many of the approaches we've taken so far, we're going to create another global array. There are probably other ways of actually doing this, but we'll keep going down this route for the moment. So in the section where we've declared all the global arrays, we're going to keep another array to keep track of the names of the targets. And there is our new array called str target names. Further down the page, we have a user-defined type called image tag. We're currently using this to keep track of the top left and bottom right coordinates of an image. We're going to add to this the ability to keep track of a target page. This gives us an element to populate this value into. Some links will have target pages and some links will not. The other thing I'm going to change in our setup is the maximum number of tabs that this system will support. It's currently sitting at 11 tabs. This is 1 tab for the plus tab and 10 user accessible tabs. We're going to increase this to the value of 16. So as we've done with the other global arrays, we need to dimension them in the pbMain function. So there is our target names array, now dimensioned in the pbMain function. When the application for our Lite browser initially runs, it has 2 tabs available, a Home tab and a Plus tab. This is set up in the initialization, the callback function of the Lite browser. So let's go to there and set up what we need to for these new target names. This is where we do the tab insert page. We're going to add on the population of the very first and second elements of the target names array. So there we are populating the first element of target names with the word home, and the second element of the target names with the plus sign. As we have now added a new attribute to the A tag in our HTML, we need to change our handling of HTML tags in order to support this. If we didn't do this, then the page would not load correctly. So we will first look at our function which renders the HTML tags. In here, we're going to create a new local variable which we can populate with the target name should one exist. So first of all, we'll go to the section of this code that handles the A tag. This is the start of a reference tag. We're going to have to change where we pick up the URL, as the attribute is now in two sections, an attribute for the URL and a separate attribute for the target. The URL command has been changed to handle the possible target option. And the second section, which is new, is to handle the presence of a target should it exist, and to populate the target variable. The other change we're going to have to make is where we store the URL. At the moment, the URL is stored in the image tag, and we're going to tack onto this the target itself. If the target does not exist, then this element will be an empty length string. So the next change I want to make is to the handling of the image tag. The image tag is currently picking up the URL, and we need to pick up from this user-defined type the target also. So there we are, picking up the target from the user-defined type. Again, if this has not been populated, then our value will be an empty length string. The next change we need to make is to the process a URL function. This currently processes a new URL into the currently selected tab. As we may well be using a target tab rather than the current tab, we need to check the value of the target. So I'm going to create a couple of new variables to handle this. And we're going to have to pass into this function a new parameter, basically the target. So before we complete the rest of this function, let's see where this function is called from. And the first call we've found to this is in the graphics prop function. And we'll need to add on to this the target. So initially we're setting the URL and the target as empty length strings. This allows us to call the isLink function, where we determine whether there's a link or not. And the same further down the code. So let's now go to the isLink function and add on this extra parameter. And there is our new target parameter. So further down the code where we actually pick up the URL, we can now populate the target from this same array. So now we're populating the URL and the target variables from the URLs array. So let's now go back to the process a URL function and push on and complete that code. So before we store the URL in the global array, there's some work to be done on the target. Have we set a target or not? The first thing to do is to test to see if the target variable has been populated. If the value stored within the target variable is not an empty length string, then we know we have a target to seek out. So we're going to have to create a new function to find the target tab. Does this target already exist, or is it going to be a new tab? So we will create a new function called findTargetTab, taking a single parameter of the name of the target. We'll create this new function in a moment. But this function will return either a 0 to say there is no existing tab found, so we can create a new one, or it will return the tab number. So we'll now test the tab number. If the tab number is 0, then no existing tab has been found, so we can now go ahead and create a new one. So we'll need another function, which we're going to call getNextTab. It will return the tab number we're going to be adding. And we can then use the familiar tab insert page command to insert a new tab. And if that's the case, we've got some work to do on our array entries. So we will create a new function to insert new array entries. So we have a few new functions to create, but we'll just push on with this function to complete the logic. So after we've inserted our new array entries with the tab number as its single parameter, we can then populate the tab handles array, the URLs array, and the target names array. Next, we want to select the page which is going to be used, that the user will see on screen. and we'll use the tab select command to select that. So there we are, setting our global tab selected value, selecting the tab, and advancing the slot number for this tab. So that handles it where the tab does not currently exist. If the tab does exist, all we need to do is to mark it as selected. So we're populating the tab number variable with the page number, marking the global tab selected as that number, and using the tab select command to select that tab so the user can see it on screen. To complete this function, we now need to handle the case where the link to the URL has no tab specified. So in this final section of this function, we can handle the no target specified, which was the original code in this function. So now that we've completed this function, we now have to double back and create a couple of new functions which did not exist in the last version. So let's first create the insert new array entries. In this function, we're passing a single parameter, which is the tab which has been selected, and we're going to add new array entries to each of the global arrays that requires it. So we have entries for the URLs, the target names, the latest slot, and the tab handles arrays. And we're also handling insertion into the URL history. And finally, the last section of this function is to purge the current tab, to make sure the URL history has no history at all. And in the remove tab history function, which is an existing one, we'll need to put a new entry in to delete entries from the target names. The tab has been deleted, so we don't need any history for it, and that includes target names. So with that in place, we're getting close to completing the changes for today. The other new function we have to create is the one that gets the next tab. This function is quite a straightforward function. We're going to step through each entry within the tab handles array to see whether the value in it is 0 or not. If it's 0, then we're going to return the value of the tab minus 1. This will give us the tab which can be created. And our final function is one to find the target tab. We know the target name, we just need to find out if it exists in the target names array. And again, quite a straightforward function taking a single parameter of the name of the target. This will step through each entry in the target names array, looking for that target string. Once it finds it, it will return the page number. Otherwise, it will return a false, which is a value of 0. There's one final change we'll need to make to the render the HTML function. In here, I'm going to create a new local variable to keep track of the name of the tab. And further down the code, where we're testing the value of the global HTML string, we're going to pick up the tab name. And we are, of course, populating the tab name using the parse command. Then once we have selected the tab, we're setting the text of the tab to this tab name. So that should complete all the changes we need to make to our application. So let's try compiling that to make sure it compiles cleanly. And it does. And now we can go and do some testing. If we run the Lite Browser executable, and we will bring up our web pages. So we will first of all bring in index number 2. This is the one which has all the links in it. If we click on page 1, it's linking to a demo page. If we go to page 2, it's linking to a separate page. If we go to page 4, again, it's linking to a separate tab. If we go to page 6, we'll get a page 6. And if we go to page 7, it should go to exactly the same tab. So the page 6 tab should disappear and be replaced with page 7, which is indeed what's happening. So if we have a quick look again at the HTML itself, we can see that pages 1, 2 and 3 go to their own targets, whereas page 6 and page 7 go to the same target. So the target command is now supported within our browser. However, in order to test to make sure that we have not broken some existing functionality, we have page 5 which does not have a target. So let's go to page 5 to see if it opens up correctly. which it does because it overwrites the home page. It overwrites the index. But we can use the back button to go back to the previous page, which takes us back to our index. So if we go back to, for example, page 4, and we will take out page 4's target, we will save the HTML, we will refresh this page, and go to page 4. And page 4 is rewriting the home page. We can go back, and the other ones work quite nicely. So in summary, what we've done today is we've extended the functionality of the URLs in our application. They now support the target command. So if a target is actually set for a URL in one of our links, it will go to that specific page if it currently exists. If it does not exist, it will create a new tab for that. We've also increased the number of tabs supported by our application. Hopefully you'll find this code of interest in your own applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.